Oh man, we had it all.
I think it's infinitely easier to critique art than it is to create art. So I'm going to create first and then I'll complain after. So this is going to be a full rewrite of season 5 of The Boys, starting from the end of episode 2 and onward. I'm going to try and keep as much intact plot wise as I can, as much as makes sense. But spoilers for the comics, spoilers for the show, and the biggest change I would make is to have a zombifying agent attached to the virus. So the virus will kill any soup it touches with the regular V in them, the standard V. But the ones that aren't immediately maimed, disfigured, or blown up by the virus will be resurrected as these cannibalistic, brain dead zombies. Now, this may seem like a total ass pull, but this does happen in the comics. Okay, this is the fate of Lamplighter. He's killed. His body is recovered by Vought, and they use electricity to reanimate him. But he doesn't come back the same. He's basically this knuckle dragging, brain dead thing, just living in its own filth and feces. Now, nothing really happens. Nothing comes of this in the comics, but I think this would add a lot to the show. On top of that, season 3 and season 4 have been leaning into body horror. So why not go full blown zombie horror? I think this would be perfect to add an analog style, found footage style horror into the show, which we haven't had a whole lot of. This would also give Homelander something to fear besides his own mortality, right? It would be about self preservation and not just his ego, not just him wanting to be a god. And if you wanted to go with the being a god plotline, what better metaphor for a good and evil holy war could there be besides zombies literally rising up from the grave? This would create chaos and panic that they really didn't do a good job of exemplifying and showing us in the show. Thematically, this would be the perfect example of why soup shouldn't exist because they cannot be controlled whether they're alive or whether they're dead. And as Homelander is in his new leadership role, this would give him a very difficult strategic issue because the soups that survive the virus and become zombies would be on the upper echelon of soups. Very powerful. So you would need powerful soups in turn to go deal with them. But if you send powerful soups in, you risk them getting bitten, getting infected, and then now you have an even more powerful soup that is zombified for you to deal with. Episode 2 would end just about the same way, with Soldier Boy being presumed dead and then waking up. But this time around, Soldier Boy wakes up and he sees the autopsy team being ripped apart by the zombified version of the Team Kicks. He's panicking, he doesn't know what's going on. The zombies start going after him. He bashes their heads in, and he starts looking around the neighborhood, sees that the neighborhood is completely abandoned. He takes a car and starts trying to drive to the closest city and sees that the entire city is abandoned, like some Walking Dead style kind of landscape. Episode 3. We see the virus spread in real time. I think this would be a great opportunity to throw in some Edgar Wright style zombie skits. Let's say a guy is coming out of his apartment. A soup is flying in the sky, starts coughing, wheezing, falls out of the sky right onto his car, crushes it, totals it completely. He calls the insurance company, right? And they explain, so what's the nature of your incident? He's like, dude, you're not going to believe me even if I said it. So the insurance company agent comes to deal with this car. They tow it. They get him an Uber. And he's like, thank God I have Allstate. They tow his car. And then as the insurance agent is writing out a report, the zombie soup like wakes up, fucking grabs him and rips him in half. Or alternatively, let's say a soup is giving a dare style assembly speech at an elementary school, and he says, remember kids, wash your hands, brush your teeth, and don't do drugs. And then his eyes start bleeding and his nose starts bleeding and he just collapses face down. He gets rushed to the hospital in an ambulance. He flatlines in the ambulance, but then resurrects and starts just like ripping the ambulance apart and it crashes. I don't know. There's a lot of fun things you could do. Back in Vought Tower, Homelander is panicking because he feels like he's failed his father and sent him to die, and he has no idea if Soldier Boy is alive or not, if he's a zombie, that sort of thing. Sister Sage is telling him that he needs to address the public. It's been over 72 hours. There's a state of emergency declared in Pennsylvania. They need to see that the White House is on top of what's going on. He doesn't care at all. He's more concerned about Soldier Boy. And he asks, like, where are we on finding Soldier Boy? How are we going to get him out of there? And Sister Sage tells him, you can't send Supes in there because no Supes will even go there. They're scared of being infected. And you can't send in a pilot over there because there is a high chance that they get shot out of the sky by a Supe and eaten. So we can't really deal with that problem quite yet. And then Homelander's just like, why can't we just drop a nuke on Pennsylvania? Who gives a fuck about Pennsylvania? Actually, let's just drop a nuke on there, kill all the zombies, and then we get Soldier Boy back, problem solved. And then Sister Sage is just like, if he's not already fuming with you right now, do you think dropping a nuke on him is going to improve his mood? So Homelander is still apprehensive about it, and he's like, oh, why do I have to do this? Why can't we just send in the diseased person? He's like, you mean the president of the CDC? Yeah, that guy, where is he? You killed him. What about the vice president of the CDC? He's like, yeah, you fired him. So Homelander reluctantly does the press conference, right? And the reporters are asking him about, how was this virus made? Is it man-made? Like, all that stuff. And then one of the people asks him, like, oh, this is Kelly Helly with Healthline NBC. And is it possible for the virus to spread between humans? And furthermore, is it possible for the virus to mutate inside humans and a more powerful version to be passed on to Supes? And then Homelander kind of pauses for a second. We see his perspective, and he gets overstimulated by all the smells in the room. He smells everything people have been touching, that they've been eating, the silverware they've been eating off of, the food and drinks they've been sharing, the smell of saliva in the wrong mouth, the smell of like dick on people's breath, and like the assholes that they've been tugging and all that shit. And he just starts freaking the fuck out, covers his nose, and he fucking bolts out of there. So after the press conference, the White House starts releasing all of this health-wise propaganda about wearing a mask to protect yourself against Starlighters. Washing your hands is the only way to fight Starlighters and their evil demonic wrath and all this stuff. Now, I think this would be a very dated critique, but funny to me nonetheless, so why not? As a random aside, I think the dynamic between Frenchie, Huey, and MM should have maintained after they broke out of the Freedom Camp, especially as the virus, as they learned that the virus worked and that they're immune from it. It makes no sense for them to keep Starlight and Kimiko, Butcher as well, but for different reasons. It makes no sense for them to keep them so close to them, right? Instead of just constantly talking about how, oh, this virus could hurt them, this virus could kill Starlight, this virus could kill Kimiko. Why not just have them be states away, be a country away? You have a nuclear bomb in your pocket that cannot touch you, right? It makes way more sense for them to isolate themselves from the rest of the boys. One, because they're the only characters that are mortal and not completely fucking crazy. It makes a lot more sense for them to have a working dynamic, for them to discuss things, to discuss how this war is going to end for them, how things are going to go for them. And also, you don't need me to tell you that people who have served time together, especially if they've been unrightfully detained, tend to form bonds with one another. There's countless examples of history. I'm not going to get into that right now. But I would have loved to see them build up an arsenal of weapons that are effective against Soup so that they can defend themselves. Like let's say a really potent acid aerosol. You could still have stakes attached to the fact that these weapons can still endanger them. But it would be way more fucking badass that they need to fend for themselves. They have these really dangerous and potent weapons that they are going to use against Soups that get near them and try to threaten them. But they have this big, just world-ending nuclear bomb sitting on them at all times. But to that point, I think they should be keeping their distance from Butcher, right? He should be out of there and not really directly connected to them because he's untrustworthy. That should be why Butcher is not in that trio, working with them as closely. Episode 4. Marie Moreau and her crew are laying low. They're wearing masks, covering their face, and they're trying to keep a low profile. But this becomes the norm for all soups. As humans get more scared of soups, soups are isolating themselves from one another and from human society and from human community. Human refugees that have completely abandoned the towns in Pennsylvania are congregating in hospitals nearby so they can consolidate food and supplies, keep electricity use in one spot, and conserve resources. At the entrance to the hospital, they have these lines where they're doing a health test. And what they're doing is pricking people's fingers. Now, this isn't about testing if they have the virus or anything like that. This is security theater. They're trying to make sure that their skin can actually be pierced. Because if your skin can't be pierced, you're probably a fucking soup and they don't want you in there. Or if you are a soup but your finger can be pierced, you're probably not that powerful of a soup and you could be dealt with if shit goes topsy-turvy. So the flying blonde dude that's dating Becca goes into diabetic shock. And at first, all the soups that are with them are just like, oh shit, oh fuck, he has a virus, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. And then Marie's just like, no, his blood is the consistency of maple syrup right now. He's going into diabetic shock. He needs insulin. I think it makes the most sense for the flying blonde dude to be the one with the medical emergency because he's the newest character. Emma is head over heels for him, but she doesn't really know that much about him. And I think this would be a perfect example to show like how quickly this relationship kind of built and they don't really know that much about each other. So they come up with the plan that Marie is going to use her blood power to imitate them pricking her finger so she can sneak into the hospital. Emma is going to be in her breast pocket because that's funny. And so that Emma can, and so they can split up in the hospital, search for insulin. And if they can't escape the hospital cleanly without being spotted, they're going to throw the insulin out the window so Sam, who's nearby, can catch it and go back to their headquarters, go back to their camp, give the guy the insulin, and they'll figure out how to escape later. So this is the plan. It's going fine. And at the front of the line, there is a crackhead soup with all these track marks on him, and they're unable to prick his finger. And the lady that's trying to prick his finger is starting to slowly kind of freak out. And he kind of just like shushes her and tells her not to say anything, tells her not to scream. She obviously calls for help. And he starts flipping out and he's begging. He's like, please just throw some fentanyl down here. Just throw some morphine down here, please. I don't know where my plug went. I just need something. I'm jonesing bad. I'm fucking itching. He starts getting belligerent. He gets aggressive and he injures one of the guards very mortally. So Marie steps in and is gonna blow him up. It's gonna like literally pop him. But Emma in her pocket tells her like, hey, people are scared of being infected with a deadly virus. Maybe don't blow him up. Maybe give him a heart attack. So Marie listens. I think it would be an interesting aside if Marie is becoming more aggressive with her powers, getting way more fucking active and violent with it. But she subdues him. She, kills him without, blowing him to smithereens. She goes over to the guard that has like a giant hole in his chest and she revives him, stitches all this up. And either through a video camera or someone recording that, the video gets captured and goes completely viral on the internet. So immediately, every soup is looking at Marie Moreau for their safety. They're looking at Marie Moreau as their salvation. And if you really put yourself into their shoes, right? Imagine there is a deadly pandemic, a deadly virus pandemic. Would you be on the side of Homelander, the jock that can shoot lasers, or would you be on the side of Marie Moreau, the blood witch that just brought someone back from the fucking grave? So people start making their choice and they start trying to immediately look for Marie Moreau. Every young soup that is scared is looking at Marie Moreau as who can protect them, who can offer them salvation. Episode 5. Soldier Boy is wandering around, he's gathering supplies, and he's living off the land. And by living off the land, I mean he's like breaking into houses that are abandoned, taking dino nuggies from the freezer, and stealing wine from people's collections that they didn't have time to take with them. But he can't heat up his dino nuggies because there's no electricity that's been shut off, there's no gas that's been shut off. So he has to like build a fire right near the house to heat up his dino nuggies. So this would be the time that we show his attempts to get a message out so he can be rescued to send an SOS. But he's an old man who doesn't understand technology and didn't care to learn. So he's made several attempts to do this, but they've all failed because of him. So let's say he steals one of the phones he finds on one of the Team Kicks, the Dead Soups, and he's trying to record a video. He takes a picture at first. He's like, oh shit. He goes to the video, starts a video. He's like, this is Soldier Boy. I repeat, this is Soldier Boy. I am stranded in Northside, Pennsylvania. There are no vehicles that can get me out of the area. I need an immediate helicopter evac. I need an evac. I repeat, this is Soldier Boy with an SOS. Turns off the video. And he goes, Alexa, perfect time for an Alexa ad, by the way. Alexa, send this video to CNN, Fox News, and CSNBC. CSNBC, Fox News, and CNN are all legacy media companies created between the 1920s and the 1930s. Yeah, yada 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 yada. He's like, no, fucking no. What's this new thing that they fucking the Bluetooth? Nah, no, the internet. Put this on the internet. Alexa, put this video on the internet. The internet is a fantastic way to share thoughts, experiences, and art. Yada 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 yada. He's like, God fucking. So he finally figures out how to get onto like an Instagram Live. Gets on an Instagram Live, starts streaming until people figure out who he is, that it's not a troll, that it's actually him, and all that stuff. And they finally get his coordinates, and then help is on the way. But he's an old man who doesn't understand how to use technology. So he turns off the app thinking that the stream is over, and then he turned it off. And he has a few hours where he's bored. He has a phone and internet. So he, starts going on some adult sites while the stream is still active. And then he starts cranking it right on stream and everyone sees it. I think that'd be very funny. It would fit the comedy of the show. You get what I'm saying? So Soldier Boy gets brought back to Vought Tower. They do all these tests on him and they realize that V1 is what kept him alive and makes him immune from the virus. So Homelander jumps to conclusions and he decides that if he injects the V1 that he's going to be safe from the virus and be immortal. And Sister Sage kind of just goes along with it and is like, yeah, sure, that's what's going to happen. So Sister Sage at the time is way more concerned with the fact that people are becoming more distrustful of Soups. They don't want to hear any health updates about the virus coming from Soups because they see how they're moving as completely self-serving. So let's say at the time Black Noir and the Deep are having their petty beef, right? And they're running to Homelander trying to stitch on each other like siblings reporting to their dad. And the Deep is just like, look, he's an actor and he's the worst kind of fucking actor. He's a musical theater actor. And then Homelander's like, Deep, shut up. And he's like, Black Noir, you're an actor. It's like, what have you been in, Black Noir? And Black Noir's like quiet, not saying anything because he's scared. He's like, oh, it's okay. And he's like, I've been in a few student films, and I have a TikTok where I do ballet. He's like, okay, so you've been in fucking nothing. You're the director of the CDC. Go. And Black Noir's like super confused, and he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, action. And Black Noir's just like, oh yeah, we've identified 13 strains of this virus, this man-made virus that is now quickly mutating, but also becoming less potent, and yada yada yada. We have this availability and this ability to treat it and contain the people. We've already contained one of the people who have been one of the people that have been infected with the zombie virus. And you get what I'm saying. And then Homelander's like, oh, that was fantastic. What an excellent performance. You are now the director of the CDC. So because the public doesn't know this Black Noir to be a Soup, right? It's kind of like a rehash of the Victoria Newman thing, I'm not gonna lie, but this way there's a human face at the center of the disease control and the disease control effort. In all honesty, that might not be the best use of Black Noir's character, but look at the competition, man. Seriously. I think having a character who is completely underqualified, being promoted to the leader of a government organization that they know literally nothing about, who just wants to sing musicals and write children's books, could be pretty prophetic and a good critique and satire of people in government. I can't think of anyone that reminds me of, but you could also have a thing about like, oh, like he's black, like fills that DEI checkbox and some racist shit like that. I think that would be on brand and would also be a decent parallel to Black Noir's real life counterparts. So I don't know. I'm riffing with that, but I'm trying my best. As a random aside, I'm gonna address Sister Sage's motivations because they're dog awful stupid. So let's say in this version of reality, Sister Sage does the most sensible thing where she wants to either get rid of and or replace Homelander, but because of the position she's in, she needs to go along with what Homelander wants because he is openly volunteering to experiment on himself with V1, which she does not know how it's going to go at all. But if she wants to try and create someone who can outlast Homelander, to surpass Homelander, she needs Homelander to sort of work out all of the kinks and the bugs. That makes the most sense for her arc. Her actual arc is so stupid that I don't even want to talk about it. It didn't happen. In the rest of this episode, we see the extent of Marie's power and what the people in her group believe she is capable of. Some people that are very naive believe that she can heal them or resurrect them from the dead or even protect them from the virus entirely, but she can't do any of that. All she can do is tell when a human is infected or not before they show symptoms, which aren't even that crazy. But this is very useful to human starlighters who she can bring around, exchange supplies with them, and humans can come interact with her and she can keep that community safe from anyone who has been exposed to the virus. I think this would actually make her arc and her character less obnoxious and annoying. The way she's all like, "Oh, I'm not the anime protagonist. I'm not more powerful than yada yada yada. I'm just little old me. I just want to be regular with the regular." So infuriating. I hated her character from the start of Genevieve season 2 to the rest of what they did with her, which was very little. But at least with this, it would make a lot of sense if what people believe she is capable of highly exceeds what she can actually do, and she has a little bit of imposter syndrome. But I also think it would be a great time for someone to sit her dumb ass down and tell her, "Look, you do not need to be more powerful than Homelander. Okay, what the power you have, right? The fact that people believe, right, that you are this god, this messiah, directly opposes Homelander's will to be this messiah. Okay? Your soft power in this religious form is tenfold more powerful than anything than what Homelander can do. You are giving people hope. You're giving them safety. You're giving them community. You are more powerful than Homelander. He's using threats and violence and coercion to control people and keep them obedient. And people are flocking to you because they see what you're capable of. You are more powerful than Homelander. Please be a good character for the rest of this season." So in the rest of this episode, the Starlighters start telling them that they need to, that the Supes and Marie need to carry their own weight, right? They need to start doing shit and helping out. If they're going to keep receiving aid and supplies that other people in their, in the resistance movement needs. So what they start doing is they get delivered a less potent form of the virus that they start intentionally injecting into mice and rats. Then they release these mice and rats around the freedom camps so that they infect Supes that are standing guard. And by the time anyone realizes what's going on and starts calling for reinforcements, other humans and other Supes can rush in and liberate those camps. Maybe even that one Raven girl from Team Kicks can show up at Marie's cult and use her powers to exchange information, keep tabs, spy on people. And she seems to have, little confidence. I think Marie Moreau would be a much better mentor to her than MM would be. Why not have her be someone that says like, "Oh, I thought I was powerless. I thought I was a nobody," and all this stuff, which she shouldn't have thought that, but I'm briefing here. But your power, your power is to have crows who are intelligent animals, spy on people, collect information, is very valuable right now. Don't undersell that. Don't cut yourself short. And we can have like an awesome like kumbaya girl boss moment. That I'm not trying to discredit that, but you get what I'm saying. I'm ranting here. Episode 6. I think episode 6 should be about Drummer Boy. Do you guys remember Drummer Boy? Starlight's childhood friend that gets murdered by Homelander and then everyone fucking forgot about? So we're going to get back to Drummer Boy. At one of the few Starlight safe houses left, the little sister of Drummer Boy, who is now an addict and has fallen on hard times, shows up there. She's knocked out, she's strung out. They call Starlight because they think this information might be important to her. So Starlight goes there. She waits for Drummer Boy's little sister to sober up. But the girl immediately freaks out and runs away, while Starlight is trying to explain what happened, that Homelander killed her brother and all that stuff. It's a lie, that he overdosed and all this stuff. So Drummer Boy's little sister goes home, and her mom doesn't really give a fuck that she's run away. This is a normal thing. Drummer Boy's little sister explains, "Oh yeah, I saw Starlight today," and her mom's like, "Okay, mija, sure," and keeps washing dishes. And her mom thinks that she was just high and tripping out, but the girl insists that she was sober and clear-headed. So she brings up that it brings up to her mom that there's a reward for Starlight and any information on Starlighters, and her mom gets really angry and tells her, "Don't you fucking dare! Don't you dare call that tip line. It doesn't. They're not gonna tell you. They're not gonna give you that reward. They're gonna lock you up way faster and way swifter than they'll do anything to those Starlighters. If you go and snitch, I would have lost two children when I only lost one." So the sister runs away after this fight, doesn't listen to the mom, and calls, the Vought Patrol or whatever, bargain brand ice anyway, because she wants the money so she can go and get high. So the agents show up to Drummer Boy's house, and they just terrorize the family because they think they're lying. They start flipping shit and, harassing them, trying to tear up their house to look for Starlight. Starlight shows up, kills those officers, and explains to the mom what happened, explains that her son was a hero, that he was one of the first Starlighters, and agreed to help her oppose Homelander, and that's why Homelander killed him. And the mom can have a moment of where she finally lets her grief goes, says she never believed a word that the Vought people said, that her son was, an angel. He never would have done that. He never would have overdosed. He wasn't even a drinker. I forgot that Drummer Boy was recovering, but more to that point, it would make sense that his mother would be distraught because, he had worked so hard to overcome his demons. Why would he do that when it finally paid off for him in a major way? And the fact that she never got to, have an open casket, that they were denied seeing the body, added to her suspicions immediately. And the woman can finally put her grief aside and have some closure about what happened to her. I think there's a bigger conversation to have about how characters of color are written off way faster and way easier than otherwise. But if I were gonna get into that, then this would be a 10-hour video. So back at Vought Tower, Soldier Boy has been on a complete bender since he's been back. He gets incredibly hungover, which he hasn't had a hangover since before he had the V1 injections. And he starts noticing wrinkles on his face, and he goes through some effort to hide his wrinkles and his gray hair. This would be a perfect time for a Just for Men ad, all I'm saying. And he starts to hate the fact and resent the fact that he's starting to relate to Homelander. The way Homelander is obsessed over his appearance, obsessed over growing old. Soldier Boy starts feeling that a little bit too. So Soldier Boy finally goes on the show with Firecracker. They do their thing, they fuck, and Firecracker finds a gray hair on his pubes. Soldier Boy and Sister Sage have a conversation, and the first thing that Sister Sage points out is that he's wearing makeup, which he of course denies and calls that sissy shit. And she explains that Homelander thinks that getting the V1 will make him immune to the virus. But she admits that she's not really sure that's going to happen. She's like, yeah, there's a high chance he injects that V1 and kills himself, because there's been no case of someone having both versions of V1 in them. And there's a 1% chance it actually works and it makes him way more powerful. But she's not really shooting down that idea, because he's volunteering to experiment on himself. So why not let him do it and see what happens, and then we can pick up the pieces after the fact. So Sister Sage kind of points at the fact that she knows that the V1 in Soldier Boy's system is slowly fading, is slowly being denatured over time. And Soldier Boy is like, how the fuck do you know that? And she's like, who do you think buried that report? Who do you think buried that file? So they reach the conclusion that their interests align a little bit. Soldier Boy wants to steal the V1 for himself so he can see if he can restore his powers back to what they were and stop this, this denaturing of the V1 in his blood. Sister Sage wants Homelander to get the virus so he can experiment on himself and she can see what happens. And Soldier Boy admits that he's been playing dumb about not knowing where this V1 is, and that he knows where the facility is, but that the facility is completely haunted. Sister Sage laughs at him, and he's like dead fucking serious, and he says, "There's a reason I'm not gonna fucking go there. If you think what if that Mind Freak guy was a powerful sidekick, you haven't fucking seen anything yet." Episode 7. So this would chronologically be episode 5, but that episode was so stupid and full of plot holes that if this is stupid and full of plot holes, sue me. So the boys go talk to Stan Edgar. Ryan sees this girl and she tells him that he's being soft and all that stuff for not fighting back. So Ryan goes and he talks with Butcher. In the conversation, Ryan brings up his girlfriend's dad, and they talk about their fathers. Ryan talks about his father. Butcher talks about killing his father. And in a very creepy Homelander-esque way, Ryan asks Butcher, "Why does your heartbeat tick up every single time I mention her father?" And Butcher lies and he tries to play it off and he says, I hate my pops, I hate his guts. So every time we talk about that, it makes my blood boil, my heart rate's gonna go up. But Ryan catches him in a lie and says, "Well, we talked about your dad 100 times. Your heart has never done that." So Butcher lets it slip that he knows that her father isn't dead. So Ryan dips out of there to try and tell her. He goes to Edgar's hideout, but by the time that he gets there, the bald guy, Black Noir, Deep, and that dog guy, I guess, are at the house and they're trying to get in. So Ryan shows up. He starts fighting them, and the bald dude has a shot lined up to pop Ryan, but the Deep stops him and tells him, "If you kill Ryan, Homelander is gonna kill us. Don't go easy on him." So he's fighting all them, and then Ryan ends up killing the Deep. And the Deep's last words are, "It's such an honor to be killed by the prince or the heir of the throne," or some, I don't know, some stupid shit like that. Black Noir grabs Stan Edgar and flies off before Ryan can catch him. Ryan is successful, but he was so injured in that fight that he's in no shape to chase after Black Noir anymore. Episode 7, The Facility. Now, I'm not going to try to ride around that Vought Rising, it's what Clara would have wanted bullshit. But in this version of it, the boys go to the abandoned facility, but it's guarded by a powerful sidekick that's, stuck in there like a tree, and a shapeshifter. A shapeshifter that can only turn into animals, but hasn't been in human form for so long that they don't know what a human looks like and it feels like anymore. So when they become a human again, they become this hideous, creepy, skinwalker looking thing. So they're walking through the forest, right? And they notice a lot of dead, eaten animals. And Butcher's like, "Oh, what do you expect? It's a forest. They eat each other." But then immediately a bird that's on a tree flies down and turns into a wolf in front of them. And Huey's like, "Am I tripping, or did that bird just turn into a fucking wolf?" And it's like, "Oh shit, it's a fucking soup." So the wolf starts chasing them, and they all get separated, and they get dragged into these weird, like, nightmarish realities, like these weird dreamscape nightmares. Butcher ends up in hell in this like very American God style club. He's clubbing and he tries to like turn someone around to ask them about something, and they're like a fucking goat head. So he's like, "What the fuck?" He goes down to the bar, orders a drink like normal, and the bartender tells him like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're the VIP. You should be in the VIP room." So he goes to the VIP room, and sitting there is Homelander, right? And let's say Homelander isn't wearing his suit. He isn't wearing his costume. He's wearing his suit. Like picture if you've ever watched the Devil May Cry show, picture like a blue suit, red tie, white, and all that stuff. He's sitting there having a drink, having a cigar, which is not normal for Homelander. And then Butcher's like freaking out, and he's like, "Oh, come on, but William, sit down. Come on, like I missed you. Whatever." He sits down, and then they talk, and Homelander explains what's going on. And Homelander says, "Look, you won. You got what you wanted. I'm dead. I'm in hell. And you're in hell. Because where did you think you were going? Duh. Like, of course you were going to go to hell. Now we can be friends for fucking eternity. Isn't this fucking great?" I think this would be the perfect way to exemplify the fact that Butcher in his heart knows that he's not much better than the person he's fighting against. He's not morally above his enemy. And this would be that perfect metaphor for that. So we cut from Butcher and we go to Huey. Huey's running in this forest. He slips, hits his head on a rock, and when he wakes up to the perfect kind of paradise. He has 2.5 kids with the white picket fence, the dog, and he's living with Annie in this sort of seemingly perfect reality. He's the manager of a Radio Shack, and everything seems normal except for the fact that it's like the 90s technology. So he asks Annie about like, hey, where is my phone? And he's like, what do you mean? How'd you lose the phone? It's in the kitchen. It's on a wire. So Huey takes his kids to school, and the teacher is Robin. Robin tells them that they're gonna do like a sex ed thing, and that they need him to sign the permission slip. And he's like, let me and Annie talk it over. Her family is very religious. We think it's something that the church should explain. And Robin's like, okay, of course it's your family and all that stuff. Huey drops his kid off at soccer practice, and A Train is the soccer coach, and they have a very friendly demeanor. As the episode moves forward, Huey needs to travel for work. He needs to attend some like manager conference, and I think it'd be a funny gag if he tells Annie that their business is growing, they're never gonna shut down. He needs to like get as high as he can in the company. So they're on a plane, they're flying, and it's gonna be Flight 37, but it's comic Flight 37. I think this would be the perfect opportunity to have everything filmed in a very retro way, to have very like 90s like effects. And we could also have a bunch of cameos play these versions of the Soups. So let me cook for a second. Hold up. Let's have Aaron Eckhart be Homelander. Let's have Jensen Ackles be Marathon. We'll have William Dafoe be Jack from Jupiter. We're going to have Evan Rachel Wood be Queen Maeve. And let's have Jeffrey Dean Morgan be the male version of Stormfront. I mean, we have him on the payroll anyway. If you've ever seen Late Night with the Devil, it does an amazing thing where these very cheap looking paper mache effects are spliced into these very real visceral effects. I think that would be the perfect direction to go with this. And this would be an amazing metaphor to show that Butcher is right in some ways. There is no version of reality where Soups can exist in that's going to be not a net negative for everyone who is in the Soup, and showing this alternate reality of life is Huey's interpretation of like, even if I had everything I want with Annie, the white picket fence, safety, comfortability, if Soups are around, that is in danger. For Kimiko's thing, I don't know. I honestly don't give a fuck. For Mother's Milk, his nightmare should be living in the 70s when he was a child, but he's an adult now, and he's a lawyer working for Vought, and he's actually defending them in a class action lawsuit. With this, I'm taking a lot of inspiration from the comic line, because that's the story of his father who just drowned himself trying to litigate Vought to own up to the illegal dumping, and all of the cancers and the birth defects that they cause. But I want to flip that on his head, where he's forced to defend Soldier Boy from a wrongful death lawsuit. So Frenchie experiences this nightmare as being in like a dark forest alone. It's cold. He doesn't know where everyone was. And he takes this opportunity to smoke some salvia, and he starts to wake up to where he is. If you're going to keep the explanation that because of all the drugs he's done, the psychic powers don't exactly work as well as they should, why not have him get high during it? And as he wakes up and realizes he's in a facility, he starts finding the boys one by one, and they're all just tripping billies. They're making no sense. They're like tweaking out, and he's forced to be their trip sitter. But as he's going through this facility, he starts seeing these like ghostly aberrations of the past. He sees people walk in the halls, scientists discuss things. He sees like the first versions of the Soups and all that stuff. And he's like, am I going crazy or whatever? And the psychic starts slowly showing him a preview for Vought Rising, but it's showing him flashbacks into the mind of the psychic. So as the psychic starts to rewind the clock and show different memories of the experiments, we see a couple of young cadets becoming very curious as to what's going on. They start becoming suspicious because the people that they say are going home aren't sending letters, aren't seen again. And they decide to sneak out and go a few miles down the road to where the experiments are actually taking place. And they decide to look in the dumpster to sort of like unpeel back this mystery, and they see these like maimed, just crazy looking experimented on flesh, right? And they start freaking out, knowing that that's going to happen to them. So as the psychic gets his first hit of Compound V, he starts developing his powers, and now he's becoming painfully aware of what's happening just a few miles down the road because he can't hear their screams, but he can feel them. He can't know what they're saying, but he hears what they're saying in his head, and it starts driving him crazy. So he attempts to hang himself. And the shapeshifter girl is the one who cuts him down from that suicide attempt, and their relationship starts to slowly build. So Frenchie starts waking up the crew one by one, and they start realizing where they are and sort of coming to, but they're still hallucinating. And they're convinced that Homelander and Soldier Boy are actually there, and they start, hiding, panicking, trying to fight. And while Frenchie is half expecting Soldier Boy and Homelander to walk around the corner, instead, an aberration of Stormfront and Bombsight come around the corner, and he hears their conversation from years past. As a random aside, can we please stop having the heroes and the villains be right under each other's noses every single episode? This isn't fucking Scooby-Doo. If they were there at the same time, Homelander would literally smell them, hear them from thousands of miles away. Please stop it. Okay, it would actually be funnier if Kimiko and Butcher are completely convinced that Homelander and Soldier Boy are right there, are in a life and death battle in their imaginations with them, while they're actually just like hitting air and like just spamming shit. There's no effects and they just look stupid, and Frenchie's just like, okay, whatever. So Frenchie realizes how much time has passed, and they've been there for like almost 2 days. And he realizes, look, we've got to get them out of there. I've seen everything I'm gonna see. So he goes to each one of them, and he's trying to wake them up so they can all get out of there. But he can't reach them. They're not listening to him. So he convinces them in their delusions that he has the V1. He has it in his hand right now. Soldier Boy and Homelander are actually there, and they all need it injected so they can be strong enough to fight Soldier Boy and Homelander. And because they're the boys, not a single one of them even thinks about it or refuses. But really, he has a bunch of perk 30s in his hand. So each one of them takes a perk 30, and they pass out so we can fucking drag them one by one to the van and drive them away. And then as they're waking up in the van, he's explaining to them what went down. So he tells them that, yeah, I couldn't get the V1. I kept trying to find the V1, but it was like the sidekick. I don't know. It was like the sidekick was hiding it from me or something. But he did learn about the radiation tank, right? He sees years of Soldier Boy's bomb sight and all of them being experimented on with the radiation from the time that they just got their powers and they're not very strong to like several injections later, and they're very strong, but the radiation still has a crazy effect on them, and if they can't escape the radiation, it could kill them. Now the boys are all like, are you sure? So you saw this while a psychic was fucking with us while you were on Salvia? And he's like, you have to believe me, guys. I know what I saw. I know what I saw. Episode 8. Back at Vought Tower, they interrogate Stan Edgar, and he tells them to go to that facility to find the V1, which Soldier Boy knew where to go the entire time. He just needed like an excuse to go, I guess. Soldier Boy and Homelander go to the facility, and Homelander is hit really, really hard by the psychic powers. He starts to age regress and have a ton of flashbacks to his youth, and starts freaking out. And it becomes very difficult to control because he's shooting lasers, he's crying, like he's getting manic, and Soldier Boy is getting really tired of him. So Soldier Boy locks him in the radiation bunker so he can't hurt himself or other people, and he's like less of a nuisance. So Soldier Boy is wandering this facility, being hit by these psychic flashes, and the psychic is kind of going into Soldier Boy's head and going through his memories. So the psychic learns about Soldier Boy's chest laser, right? And they come to this agreement that the psychic will allow him to take the V1 in exchange for depowering and killing him and his shapeshifter girlfriend. Soldier Boy agrees, and then, you still have this tree thing, I'll keep that intact, But then a little mouse scurries over to the tree, and it becomes this really creepy, like humanoid, very pale skinned skinwalker thing. And Soldier Boy's like, oh, what the fuck? Okay. Can't believe I cracked that years ago or something. I don't know. It says some Soldier Boy shit. Soldier Boy fires out the blast, and in the last impact frame, you see the Psychic and the Shapeshifter together again as people for one last time. So Soldier Boy takes the V1, he abandons Homelander there, takes the V1 back to Vought Tower and injects it. And enough time passes and they do all the tests and they show that the V1 didn't change anything. The chain reaction in his body is still going on. So only then does he send someone to go find Homelander and take him out of that radiation pit. But by this time, Homelander has been lucid for a long time because the Psychic died. So he's just been stuck in there and he's very upset now. And let's say Soldier Boy says like, all right, well, how to get you back for sending me to fucking fuck-ass nowhere, Pennsylvania. So Homelander goes back to Vought Tower and he sees that Soldier Boy has stopped caring, has let himself go, has all the gray hairs, out and proud, has wrinkles, and he's packing his bag. He's got a Hawaiian shirt on. He looks like a fucking dad. He's like, where the fuck are you going? And Soldier Boy explains to him that there is no point in the V1, right? If you get infected with the virus once, you won't die, but you're going to lose your powers eventually, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. And Homelander responds by saying, well, that's only if I get infected with the virus, which I won't. And he says, yeah, if you are just the Lord of the Skies and never come down to Earth, yeah, you won't get infected with the virus. And if you never fuck anything, you won't catch clap. But what kind of way is that to live? So Homelander can't handle this because he sees Soldier Boy as part of his own legacy, and he can't let Soldier Boy go on, live his life, be depowered, right? So he lashes out at Soldier Boy and tries to stop him from leaving. Soldier Boy insists that like, I may be an old man, but I still got enough fucking dog in me to kick your fucking ass. So they start fighting. Soldier Boy attempts to power up his chest laser, but Homelander actually really starts freaking out about being depowered and stops holding back. He hits him, breaks Soldier Boy's neck, and he has like an Ivan the Terrible moment where he's holding Soldier Boy and crying like, "Oh, can I do this?" And in that moment, he decides to put Soldier Boy back in his little tank and freezes him again to preserve his likeness, to preserve him the way he wants, the image he wants, the light that he wants to be, because he sees himself as a god. And how could he let his father become less than a god? As a random aside, I think it would be better if the scene where Homelander injects the V1 is played off a little bit more comedically. Like someone comes in to open the radiation tank, gives him the V1. He's like, grabs the thing, lasers himself, injects it, and he like has this like big dramatic thing where he like anime powers up, but like nothing happens, and he's like, "Do you feel anything?" He's like, "I don't know." He's like, "Maybe it might take him, give it a second to hit." Something like that. That's episode 9. Homelander is using the church to convince people that Marie is literally a witch and a demon, and he's airing these ads that are like political attack campaigns, but he's also using the church's resources to amplify the brain power of these psychics. So every time one of these ads play on TV, the psychic is overriding people's critical thinking and trying to kind of herd them into assuming that, Homelander is the god that's going to save you, and Marie is this demon that brought upon this plague, and is like Satan reincarnated or something like that. I guess that could be an interesting dynamic where Homelander thinks he is like the new Jesus, and he sort of dawns Marie as like Lucifer. I did think it was pretty stupid in the show how he's using this, the sidekicks and the church to crush dissonance from people who are already willingly attending his church, already willingly going to his events. That just kind of seemed like overkill, and I don't know. At that point, I wasn't really getting the satire anymore. So Homelander goes on live TV, starts declaring that he's a god, and they're in a holy war to kill Starlighters and Marie Moreau and all that stuff. At that moment, the boys fucking drop a dirty bomb on DC with the virus in it, and on air, his nose starts bleeding, and he's like, "Oh shit." they've come to storm Olympus, or I don't know, some shit like that. The boys fly in there with a fucking helicopter along with other human freedom fighters. Huey tells the freedom fighters not to use lethal force against the humans if they can avoid it. And the plan is to go in there and just outlast Homelander. They know that even with the V1, he's eventually going to be incapacitated by the virus for several hours because they had the camera on and they saw how long Soldier Boy was out before he woke up. And that's what they're waiting for. Now, I know it might be very impractical for them to be fighting Homelander, with masks on, and it would make a lot of sense that those would break. But let me pull something out of my ass real quick and say that Malchemical made these special Kevlar masks so that they won't break and the glass won't shatter. And maybe this might be very stupid, but it might be in line with the humor of the show. Let's say that because these masks are Kevlar, they can't really have anything. They can't have filters on them, right? So they need to have oxygen. So to have enough reservoir of oxygen, let's say like Malchemical kisses all of them individually, so that there's enough through his saliva. They have like a very condensed oxygen that will bubble out and become gas. I don't know. I'm making shit up, but I think that could be funny. Or like he needs to spit in their mouths individually, and that'd be really fucking disgusting. But that would be on brand, and it would be a more fun way to use Malchemical than they did. So they stormed the White House. Allfather is fighting them, but the virus gets to him, and it makes him lose his voice, and he just collapses and croaks. Homelander isn't powering down as fast as they thought because the V1 actually did make him stronger. And he's really putting belt to ass, and he's fucking them up real bad. So Butcher, throws a dog treat to Homelander, and he says, "Fetch." And Tara swoops in and starts fucking biting his balls, and they turn the tide. And he was like, "You fucking gave your dog Compound V." He's like, "It bloody worked, didn't it?" So Homelander starts getting tired. Homelander wraps a crowbar around his neck instead of like hitting him with it, because that's kind of dumb. I think he should wrap it fucking around his neck and fucking choke the shit out of him with it. Until Homelander passes out, and then Tara goes over and starts humping his unconscious body on live TV. So ending one, Butcher just uses the crowbar, chokes him out, and breaks his neck with it. Ending two, they transport Homelander to the facility where they were looking for the V1. They wake him up with the radiation, still filming this and live streaming it to everyone, right? He wakes up, and then Butcher announces that, this is the trial of John Homelander Doe. And Homelander, of course, tries to break out, starts to laser. He's like, "You can't fucking do this to me. I'm a god. I'm going to kill every last fucking one of you when I get out of here." So they open that radiation gate, and it fries him, and they start listing off the names of the people, in Flight 37, like, and then explains like how young some of the people, were that died. This might be kind of a mute point to have Homelander confess to his crimes, but I think it would make a lot of sense if Butcher is adamant on Homelander confessing that he did what he did to his wife Becca. I think that should be like the last thing that finally he's not gonna kill him until until Homelander actually confesses what he did, confesses to everyone what he did. And I think that they should really scorch him with that radiation. And then when he's like a decrepit pile of flesh, missing teeth, one eye, hair falling out like the Homelander in the final or Black Noir of the final comics, that's when he begs for his life. That's when he begs like, "Please, I suck you dick, Butcher fully opens the floodgates of radiation and "I suck you dick, So Huey clocks the pure enjoyment that Butcher has for torturing Homelander, and he knows in his heart that this is not going to stop with just Homelander. Episode 10. So years pass, and at this point, Huey is the director of the CIA for the super-enabled division or whatever, and his goal is to make a registry where super-abled people can account for themselves and protect themselves from one another. I think this would be an awesome time to focus on supes that are like not powerful, that are more disabled and disfigured by their powers, that society has more or less shunned, forgotten about, because now they're in a very vulnerable position where the only people that they can be around are other supes, but because they're not powerful, they can't defend themselves, and they're likely to be bullied and abused by other soups, but they can't really go towards humans because humans are still afraid of soups. You know, they're worried about them becoming zombies and all that stuff. So a lot of underpowered soups need protection. You know, need to be protected more than they need to be controlled, really. But Huey notices a pattern of these powerful soups that are people of interest that are likely to become the next Homelander keep ending up dead. It's a pattern that could be traced through the entire United States, like a serial killer going on a spree. So Butcher is alive and well, but Huey is not really in a rush to stop him because Butcher is killing the most dangerous and the most sadistic and evil soups out there. And he's kind of doing him a favor. And Huey is way more focused on these soups that have been shunned by society, that have these creepy mutations and all that stuff. A small medical facility that is trying to hide its connection and its funding from Vought is working on a vaccine for the virus. Now, the public isn't in any way interested in this, but it's sold as something to deal with the zombie problem in that a soup can inject the vaccine and they won't be immune from the virus and they will lose their powers, but at least they won't turn into a zombie. So the public isn't necessarily excited about this. They don't want this, but they're going along with it because of how terrified they are and how difficult the zombie problem is to deal with. Right? But Huey and Butcher know that this is a complete lie. This is just Vought trying to cover up their mistakes and put a band-aid on the problem and keep on going. So Huey knows that Butcher is going to target this place, so he sends someone undercover to sell some black market explosives and puts a tracker in there so we can track Butcher and stop him. So when they get there, Huey stops him in his plant, and they kind of debate the fact that this vaccine is going to probably kill more people than it saves. You know, blowing up the building with people inside, how Huey doesn't want him to harm the innocent. Butcher says anyone that's willingly trying to maintain soups is just as guilty and they need to die too. And Huey kind of counters this by saying, well, there's probably plenty of people who aren't fully aware of the work that they're doing. They're just trying to save lives. So as they argue, Huey says, look, I understand that and I agree with you, but that doesn't matter because I know you don't care. You just want an excuse to kill people. So he exposes the virus to Butcher because Butcher hasn't been depowered. He would floods the room with it. Butcher starts croaking, starts having a seizure, and Huey walks over to him, puts fucking 2 in his head. And I don't want some sappy, intimate, oh, like I always knew there was good in you. Oh my God, you're just like Lenny. Like, I'm sick of that. The vibes with Butcher are so off. This should be like a zoomed out street view. You see the flash of the gun. It's all muffled, like some gangland shit. All right? And then the fire alarm gets pulled. The employees from the medical facility kind of drain out of the building onto the sidewalk. And then you see the entire thing go up in flames. Because Huey knows that destroying that research and destroying that building is actually the better thing to do. And he's actually taken a little bit from Butcher's philosophy. He's just doing it a little bit differently. And that's the end. The ending had far too many off details, especially as it relates to Butcher's character, to even take seriously. First of all, they win, and then they just go back to drinking beers and hanging out and watching Sunday Night Football like they're one big happy family. And at least Ryan has the sense to be like, hey, you're a fucking psycho. Stay away from me. But the rest of the boys are far too casual. And I respect the fact that they were trying to recreate the scene with Huey and Butcher in the finale of the comics, but the tension in this version is siphoned off by the fact that the rest of the boys are still alive when they were dead in the comics. So the urgency was there for Huey to do something. In this version, he could have texted them and been like, hey, Butcher's on a warpath. Gonna send my location, pull up. And then he wouldn't have been alone. That scene in the comics is pretty anticlimactic and a little bit bittersweet. Butcher needs to get to a high point to set off the frequency and kill all the soups. Huey's chasing after him. Butcher slips, falls, and breaks his neck. So he's unable to set off the charge. Knowing that Huey is going to stop him, but won't kill him, he spins this lie to Huey and tells him that in cleaning up all the loose ends and killing all the boys, he also murdered Huey's parents. Huey, in a fit of rage, stomps Butcher to death and immediately calls his folks and realizes that they're fine and that Butcher was completely lying. And it's like, oh shucks, Butcher, you got me again. You got me one last time. Huey does save the, get the girl, save the day, and gets to ride off into the sunset, but his comrades did not. And he's really lucky to be alive, and the only reason he is alive is because Butcher didn't see it necessary to kill him before he started his plan. He didn't see Huey as a threat, as someone who was coward, was brave enough or smart enough to figure out what he was doing and try and stop him. And that scene where Huey stomps out Butcher is very similar to the one where he kills A Train. And I think this is emblematic of the fact that Huey didn't let his anger go. He didn't let his, vengeance go. But he does now. When he stomps out Butcher, he can finally let his anger go. Because that's what Butcher was manipulating. That's what Butcher was using and fueling to pull him into this war. And it's quite sad and tragic that the other people that helped him get over his tragedy and put the pieces of his life back together, get his confidence back, he wasn't able to save. While we're talking about comic Butcher versus show Butcher, the Butcher in the comics doesn't completely forget about his mission in his war with Homelander. When Homelander slash Black Noir is defeated, he walks over to him with crowbar in hand, uses it to crack his skull open, and then says, hey, let's pretend this part over here is the part of your brain you used when you hurt my girl Becca. Then he reaches into his skull, grabs that part of his brain, and squishes it in his hand. And in the show, Butcher's like, this is for Frenchie. Yeah, punch, punch. And it really seemed like he forgot about Becca entirely. Like he didn't care about her at all. And matter of fact, what happened to her being this ghost hallucination he would see? This angel on his shoulder. It really feels like his revenge was not even part of his motivation anymore, and that you can't lose that, or you lose the character. I wanted to delay my criticism in this video because I think it's easy to criticize, but I'm not a perfect writer. I'm not even a good one, depending on who you ask. But any regrets I have about my writing, which I have plenty of them, but that can all be kind of quelled by the fact that I still own all the rights to my own work. I can change it whenever I want, however I want. I can adapt it into whatever format I want. With that being said, this is my Kickstarter. This is my book. I wrote this book like maybe a year and a half ago. And I had a lot of fun making it. But there was still a lot of things I wanted to change. There was things that I wanted uh, to be better about it. And I'll talk more about that later. I'm gonna talk about the boys in a second. Here are some sticker designs that I made because I believe in rewrites and second chances. And why I can't really relate to the writers of this show. I can't empathize with them because it's a lot different, having something you've written that you have complete control over, complete, autonomy over, versus something that you're paid to write. You have to write this one episode, you have to turn it in at this specific time, and you have very little communication with the other writers and directors. That must be a very different feeling to go back and have some regrets about how you went about it, the choices you've made, um, versus someone who wrote completely out of their own obligations, totally for fun. So I just want to offer that, extend that olive branch before I whip it back because these writers were playing in our fucking faces the entire time. I've heard a lot of people complain that Starlight doesn't do anything in the show and she doesn't win fights anymore. And I don't necessarily disagree with that critique, but they were allergic to showing us anything involving the Starlighters. Her entire emotional arc and her relationship with Huey or the problems in her relationship with Huey hinge on the actions of things we don't fucking see. We're told about the Starlighters and that they're being attacked and persecuted, they're being, killed in mass. And the only thing we get from the Starlighters in this season is two no names in the beginning, some bloody rags in an empty room, and some text message updates. She sees the demise of her guerrilla movement through fucking Zoom, and we're supposed to care about that. I don't. I just don't. They literally broke the first rule of show, don't tell. And from the first episode, it really seems like not only is there a lack of communication between directors and writers of each episode, it felt like there was a lack of continuity between scenes. Because how did Starlight escape from Noir? It seemed like without her light power, she was very outmatched. And then we just cut back to her, and I guess she escaped somehow, unscathed. And I was convinced that Black Noir was going to be a double agent, that he was actually on her side and let her go. But they chose the stupidest way they could go about it. That prank war, that prank war between Black Noir and the Deep was so fucking irritating. I don't have a more nuanced critique of it besides that it was an overplayed joke that went on for too long. Like you took too long to tell me a joke that I didn't find fucking funny. And it really irritated me and it was a fucking waste of time. The last time two soups in the show had some serious beef, it ended with them scraping Blue Hawk off the fucking pavement. And you expect me to care about these podcast bros having a prank war and fucking killing him with the podcast, cable? I don't care. That's stupid as fuck. I don't care about that. And with Huey, I was so wholly convinced that part of his arc was that his reckless selfishness was going to get him and other people killed. Like the moment he ran off to protect some rando lady that was in the camps with them instead of getting out of there with his team, it seemed like Starlight realized that she can't save him from himself. That she was gonna have to stay focused on the mission, and whatever happens, happens. Because it seemed like she could live with Huey dying, but she couldn't live with Huey jeopardizing their mission and getting in the way. And then this continues on where he keeps trying to preach forgiveness and looking on the bright side of things and all this stupid bullshit to Newman's daughter and Translucent's son. It was like he was asking to get himself killed, but none of this resulted in any consequences for him at all. And his self-righteousness was so infuriating when they used the virus against Soldier Boy, and Butcher's like, "Oh man, I wish I could have seen that," and he's like, "Trust me, no, you don't. You didn't want to see that." How fucking dare you say that right next to MM? Like MM didn't have his life ruined by Soldier Boy, and he's supposed to not feel good about watching him die. Like get off your fucking high horse. Like it's crazy. Every fucking character in this show is 10 times more selfish than they were. It was crazy how the debate on how to use the virus or if to use the virus began and ended with how it would personally affect them. How it would harm Kimiko, how it would harm Starlight. In the comics, the weapon that they use against Soups, they know is gonna kill a lot of regular people who were exposed to Compound V accidentally. Just like MM's children. There were hundreds of people who just happened to live in the wrong place at the wrong time and were next to an illegal dumping site. And that frequency that kills Soup was going to kill them too. The hesitancy to use the virus and the urgency from Huey to stop Butcher is about protecting innocent people. Like he's not even concerned. He's not even thinking about Starlight. We don't even hear anything from Starlight in the finale of the comics. He's concerned about protecting regular, everyday people, and his urgency is informed also by the fact that Butcher killed all the other boys. And in this, it's literally about, oh, you shouldn't kill the people in Vought and all the Soups in Vought. That would be bad. That would make us the bad guys. It was crazy. I thought it was so fucking stupid, and it makes all of them seem so selfish, where all they're concerned about is if they're gonna die. And I was losing my fucking mind when I saw Kimiko argue about how they shouldn't use the virus because MM and Frenchie aren't the ones that are gonna die, and Huey aren't the ones that are gonna die. Mind you, in the fucking episode before, she got lasered in half. A ton of people that were at the freedom camps died trying to escape, and she's worried about her fucking self. That's insane. I couldn't deal with it. I when I rewatched that episode, I was actually so mad I had to pause it for a second. I don't even care that they made Kimiko talk, but the notion that someone whose first language is not English and who went mute for several years would now speak without a touch of their accent is of their original accent is fucking stupid. And I'm not some expert on this. My undergrad was in speech therapy and audiology. That's not how that fucking works. That's not how any of this works. Even if you were super TikTok pilled and you learned to learn English on the internet, there are plenty of examples of Asian Americans who learned English, learned a lot of slang, and the way they talk is influenced by internet and slang. None of them speak with a purely American accent with every word. That's fucking stupid. They might say phrases and certain words that sound very American, sound very like Gen Z maybe, but to speak without a touch of the accent that you grew up with, that nah, I couldn't. That was a horrible directing decision. Horrible. Um, Episode 5. Can anyone explain to me why the bald dude decided to kill Translucent Sun instead of Huey? Like honestly, can anyone explain that to me? And that episode I think marked where they just decided to just waste our time, because what was the point of the Deep using the gas to knock out Stan Edgar and Black Noir? He could have just taken credit back at Vought Tower, because Black Noir doesn't fucking talk. That didn't change literally anything. You could have cut that out and it wouldn't have changed anything that happened. And again, with the continuity issues between episode I think 6 and 7, when Homelander gets the V1, how did they get out of there? They're in like a cornfield with no vehicles around, with two soups right there that want to kill them, and then the stage just resets like it's a goddamn sitcom, and nothing comes of it. Like it really seems like the people who were directing episode 6 and episode 7 had no fucking communication whatsoever. It's very, very jarring at that point, because if you watch them back to back, it's like they should be in different parts of the season. Firecracker, I don't really care about Firecracker, but she had a very similar arc to Queen Maeve, except instead of being put in that position of power, she kind of cozies up to a dangerous position of power. And once she realizes that people she cares about can't be protected by her position, she tries to act on that. Except Firecracker is really fucking dumb and cowardly, so I don't care. Like, I just didn't fucking care about her death. It would make a lot more sense if she's killed because she knows something that she's not supposed to. Like, let's say, I didn't even bother to write this in because I didn't care. But let's say she finds, when she finds one of the gray pubes on Soldier Boy, she lets this slip and refers to Soldier Boy to Homelander as his like gray old grandpa or something like that. And then Homelander gets wind of this and is like, and she's like, "Oh, was that a secret? Oh, I'm so sorry, darling. Like, my lips are sealed. I won't say a thing. And then, you can trust me." And she's like, "You know what? Good. Because I don't need to." And then he fucking kills her. That would make more sense if she just knows something she's not supposed to and gets too big for her fucking britches. Not that she's trying to be like some martyr and some like tragic character. She's not. I don't like it. It's not that deep with her. It's really not that deep. The sci-fi part of this show took a massive nosedive. The fact that we learned that Soldier Boy was exposed to large amounts of radiation years prior to being kidnapped by the Russians and exposed to massive amounts of radiation is a huge variable that they just ignore. That in science is called a variable that you cannot control for, and somehow that does not matter at all. And he has V1 in his system, and that's a massive variable that they just fucking ignore and doesn't matter. It was killing me that throughout this entire season, they discovered two massive weaknesses of Homelander, and they decide to use none of them. That would be like if Lex Luthor discovers kryptonite and how it hurts Superman, and then he realizes that a solar eclipse is coming that's going to block out the sun, and during that time, Superman is going to be weakened and vulnerable. And what he decides to do is build a fucking mech and fight Superman with the mech. That would be fucking stupid. Why would you not use the weaknesses that you learned about to kill the big bad? Like, it's just fucking ridiculous. So the VOD Rising promo, like, what can I really say about it that hasn't been said already? It shoehorns in characters that we don't care about, expects us to care, and it takes way too fucking long to get to the point, right? And the framing of this is that, these young soups in the 1940s have this maternal crush on Stormfront, a Nazi. Now, if the way the characters of color were dealt with wasn't like disrespectful and very suspect, maybe I would have some hope for this. Maybe this could be an interesting critique of the revisionist history, how people assume that in America during World War II that like no one in America was sympathetic or supportive of the German Nazi Party, which is just not the way that was. Like a lot of people, worldwide, eugenics was very popular. Every single country that was, had a mixed race population had some form of apartheid or some form of segregation, different laws for different people. And this could be, if the show didn't suck, would be an interesting look into showing how popular the Nazi ideology really was in America and how we've sort of like revised that in history. How going to war with, Japan and Germany was more of a business choice than really like a moral one. So thank you so much for watching this long. I really appreciate you. I'm going to talk more about my own writing and my Kickstarter. So if you're not too concerned about that, you can go. It's been real. But if you feel invested in me in any way as a storyteller, or want to support me, this is how you can do it. So I'm gonna talk about this book a little bit. So the buzz around the book kind of peaked on, especially on TikTok, around November, Christmas time of 2024. And I realized, and then I think the audiobook came out sometime around the summer. And I think the buzz died down significantly. And I'm not blaming anyone for this. These were my own financial decisions. I'm just trying to get across how the business side of this artistic venture kind of gave me pause and some analysis paralysis because I've just been down more than I've been up recently. But I also know in the back of my mind that there were still some things I wanted to rewrite to perfect about my first book, or the first book in that series. And I also, before I finished the rest of the series, and I got done, what I could with the resources and time that I had, and I'm very proud of that. Like life was good back then, but then life happens. You hit rocky times. You try to go back to school, get your life in order, and something about selling like romanticy books on TikTok just seemed very unserious and not something I wanted to spend so much time doing. But with that being said, this series finale was so fucking bad. Like, you don't understand. I was a D1 dick writer for this show. I was an A1 fucking glazer. I mean, look at me, bro. I bought this thing like 5 years ago. And this season finale was so fucking bad. It literally broke me out of my writer's block because I haven't written anything this long in a long time. I haven't made a video that's been over like 15 minutes in a long time. But I definitely wouldn't describe this as a traditional writer's block. There's still always ideas for current projects, for new projects popping into my head every single day. Some of which I think would interest the audience who likes the boys. And if you want to hear me talk about more of those comic book superhero ideas I have, stay tuned. I might get into that. But I really feel like I owe it to the people who supported A Court of Queens and supported me to give them the best product that I can make for them. And especially before I move on to any other series, I would want to finish those books that I started. And I wouldn't feel confident taking on a bigger project, a more expensive project, a more daring project before I, finish what I started. So what I wanted to accomplish with this video is to one, rewrite the series, not only for the fans, but for myself, because I felt very disappointed. But also to show an audience that may not be too familiar with me, what I'm capable of, show them my storytelling prowess, and hope, give them hope that I can rework my own mistakes, kind of rework and perfect something that I've written. Um, because I'm gonna need to be doing that, fairly soon. So if I can fix this, I can fix what I've built. And if the writers of this show, for as bad as they dropped the ball, deserve some grace and some forgiveness and some, what's the word? If what they've written can be salvaged, then what I've written can be salvaged. And that's where the whole motto, "I believe in rewrites and second chances," came from. Where if this can get a rewrite and get a second chance, uh, then maybe I can too. Of course, I always want to give the audience something before I ask. You give and then you take. So this is, if you enjoyed The Boys, if you didn't like season 5, if you were a fan of the comics, or maybe you liked the show, hated the comics, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you took anything out of this and enjoyed this rewrite, drop a like, drop a follow. I've been Emery Brown, and I'm going to be writing a lot more real soon. Thank you.